Welcome to this deep dive. And if you are listening to this right now, I really want you to know that this specific conversation has been custom tailored just for you.
Yeah, we have a, deeply thought-provoking text today.
We really do. We are going to unpack an excerpt from Frank Canandri's work, Rise It. Anyway, Strength in the Storm. And, from the moment I started reading through these notes, I realized this forces a complete reevaluation of how we handle disruptions.
Right, because it's not just about managing stress.
Exactly. It is about fundamentally altering our relationship with adversity.
It really is a paradigm-shifting piece of writing. It's remarkably concise, yet it manages to capture something incredibly profound about the human experience.
Yeah.
It forces you to pause and really examine the mechanics of your own internal compass. Canandri is asking us to look directly at the moments when our lives are suddenly violently interrupted.
And to question our default reactions to those interruptions.
Precise.
And to give you, the listener, a sense of what we are walking into today, this isn't just some breezy text about getting through a tough week at the office.
Or dealing with a mild inconvenience.
Right. We're talking about major disruptions. Because, as the text points out right out of the gate, life does not wait for us to be ready.
It really doesn't.
Think about it like being caught off guard by an actual, literal storm. You check the weather app, it says sunny skies, so you head out for a hike in just a t-shirt. And then, out of nowhere, the sky turns black and you are just getting hammered by freezing rain.
You're completely unprepared.
Exactly. You are shivering, you are miles from your car, and the storm does not care that you didn't bring a jacket. It's here.
That's a great analogy.
And Canandri transitions that to life's metaphorical storms. He specifically lists things like deep disappointments, sudden betrayals, massive professional failures, or entirely unexpected life changes. They always come without warning.
Which is a universal, if uncomfortable truth. And as we get into the architecture of his argument, I actually want to encourage you, the listener, to bring something specific to mind right now.
Like a personal storm.
Yes. Think about a current challenge you are facing right now. It could be something monumental that has completely upended your trajectory. Or maybe just a persistent, deeply frustrating friction in your professional or personal life.
So just hold that in your head.
Right. Hold that specific challenge in your mind as we go through this, because the core of Canandri's message today is about redefining our understanding of resilience in the face of those exact challenges.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to start with a scenario that I think a lot of our listeners can relate to before we get into the heavy philosophical lifting.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you have spent the last 3 years building a comprehensive business strategy. You have poured your capital, your time, your team's energy into this vision. And then, virtually overnight, a massive shift occurs in the market.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. Maybe a new disruptive technology is released that renders your core product completely obsolete. Suddenly, the landscape you are operating in just doesn't exist anymore.
It's gone.
It's totally gone.
Yeah.
Now, in that moment of crisis, you have a couple options. You can spend weeks or months raging at the unfairness of the market, furious at the developers of that new technology, absolutely consumed by the fact that your 3-year plan is ruined.
Which is what a lot of people do.
Naturally. Or you can acknowledge the new landscape, recognize that your previous strategy is dead, and immediately start analyzing how to pivot your remaining capital.
That is a brilliant visualization of the core conflict Canandri is addressing here, because spending months yelling at the market doesn't bring your obsolete product back to life.
It really doesn't.
It just drains the exact cognitive resources you desperately need to engineer a pivot. And that brings us directly to how he frames the concept of resilience in the text.
Which is kind of controversial, honestly.
It is. He writes that in these moments of sudden storms, those unexpected market shifts or personal betrayals, resilience is absolutely not about pretending everything is fine.
It's the visceral choice to rise when everything inside of you just wants to stay down on the floor.
Yeah.
But wait, how does he differentiate that from just giving up?
What do you mean?
Because I think a lot of us hear the word acceptance and we associate it with waving a white flag. Like, if I accept that this new technology destroyed my business model, isn't that just a defeatist mentality?
What's fascinating here is how he defines the starting point of resilience to answer that exact question. He says resilience begins with acceptance, but then he immediately introduces a crucial, highly nuanced distinction.
Okay.
He writes, not acceptance of defeat, but acceptance of reality.
Oh, wow. acceptance of reality.
We really need to pause on that because the difference between those two things is the difference between staying paralyzed on the ground and strategically getting back up.
I want to make sure we really define that for the listener. Acceptance of defeat versus acceptance of reality. When someone says, I accept defeat, what they're really internalizing is, the storm won. I am a permanent victim of this circumstance. It has conquered me and I have absolutely no agency left.
Exactly. They merge their identity with the failure itself.
Right. But acceptance of reality feels completely different. It feels detached.
Detached and objective. Acceptance of reality is simply acknowledging the data in front of you. It is looking at the betrayal or the failed product launch or the sudden disappointment and saying, this is the current state of affairs. This is my landscape.
You're not saying it's good. You're just saying it's happening.
Yes. Kanandri writes that when we stop fighting what has already happened, we gain the clarity to decide what happens next. Think about the massive amount of psychological energy it takes to fight the past.
Oh, it's immense.
When you are in denial, or when you are endlessly ruminating on how a thing should have been, your brain is essentially trying to wage a war against time itself. It is a battle that you will mathematically lose every single time.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Yeah.
You are draining all your batteries fighting a ghost. We see this all the time with people who refuse to accept a changed reality.
They double down.
They double down on the obsolete business model. Or they keep trying to force a dynamic in a relationship that is fundamentally broken down. And this makes me want to ask you, the listener, to reflect on this for a second.
Bringing it back to that challenge.
Yeah, think about that challenge you brought to mind earlier. How often do we waste our precious time and mental bandwidth wishing the storm hadn't arrived, instead of figuring out how to navigate the rain?
That's the real question.
How much strategic clarity are we sacrificing because our ego is refusing to accept the reality of the situation?
Ego plays a massive role there. Our ego wants the world to conform to our plans. And when it doesn't, the lack of clarity that follows is exactly what keeps us stuck.
Yeah, you're blind.
If you refuse to accept the reality of a severe financial downturn, you cannot possibly make an effective budget to survive it. If you refuse to accept that a core relationship has fundamentally changed, you cannot take the necessary steps to set boundaries or to heal.
So acceptance isn't waving the white flag.
Kanandri is telling us that acceptance is not surrender. It is simply putting your feet firmly on the ground, establishing a baseline so you can calculate your next move.
That distinction takes all the passivity out of acceptance and turns it into a highly active strategic maneuver. It's almost like a mental triage.
Mental triage, I like that.
Now, moving further into the text, Kanandri introduces a sequence of ideas that map out what happens after you achieve that acceptance. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It's a great section.
He enthusiastically breaks down the anatomy of a storm into 3 distinct equations. It creates what we could call a triad of growth.
The triad, yes.
He writes, every setback carries a lesson. Every delay carries preparation. Every hardship carries hidden strength waiting to be discovered.
Those 3 lines are incredibly dense. They completely flip the script on how we typically view adversity. Instead of seeing a disruption as a punishment, it becomes a remarkably efficient, albeit painful, classroom.
Let's dig into that, because when we hit a severe setback, our brain immediately reads it as a total failure. We don't naturally see a lesson, we just see a wall we crashed into.
Yeah, it hurts.
So how do we shift from the pain of a setback to actually extracting that lesson?
It requires overcoming our own cognitive dissonance. When you experience a setback, say you launch a major project and it completely flatlines, nobody engages with it, the immediate emotional response is shame or frustration. You want to distance yourself from the failure.
Yeah, you want to pretend it didn't happen.
But Kanandri is arguing that the setback is actually rich with vital data. If you view it as a lesson, you have to ask yourself, what data did this setback give me today that I didn't have yesterday?
So it's about treating your own life like an ongoing experiment. If the project flatlined, passive suffering says, I'm terrible at this. Active data collection says, okay, the marketing failed to reach the target demographic, or the pricing model was flawed.
Precisely. It removes the emotional sting and replaces it with intellectual curiosity.
The setback isn't a reflection of your worth, it's just raw feedback from the environment.
And that mindset perfectly sets up the second part of his triad. Every delay carries preparation. I want to isolate this concept because it is huge.
That might be the hardest pill to swallow for our audience.
Yeah.
Because if there is one thing ambitious, driven people universally despise, it is a delay.
Oh, absolutely.
We operate on timelines. We have 1-year plans, 5-year plans.
And we tie our sense of self-worth to those timelines. We tell ourselves, I need to hit this financial milestone by the time I'm 35, or my company needs to go public by Q4. So when a disruption causes a delay, our immediate visceral reaction is to view it as a denial of our goals. We think we have been derailed, that we are falling behind our peers, and it feels like a disaster.
It feels like you're losing the race.
But Kanandri is offering a profound psychological shift here. He explains the profound psychological shift of viewing a delay not as a denial of your goals, but as necessary training. Not as an empty void of wasted time, but as an active period of mandatory preparation.
It's the idea that maybe you weren't actually ready for the thing you were sprinting toward. Maybe the storm forced you to halt your progress, because if you had achieved that goal with your current skill set, you would have crashed and burned.
Yes, it's protection.
The delay isn't a punishment from the universe, it's an opportunity to build capacity. Think about it, if you get promoted to an executive role before you have developed the emotional intelligence to manage a large team, that promotion will destroy your career.
It happens all the time.
Sometimes, life imposes a frustrating delay, so you can develop the soft skills, the resilience, or the operational infrastructure you will need when the opportunity finally arrives.
That is a deeply mature way to look at our frustrations. It forces us to ask, what am I supposed to be practicing right now? And that ties directly into the third part of his triad. Every hardship carries hidden strength waiting to be discovered. This implies that there are vast reserves of capability, endurance, and courage inside of you that you simply cannot access when the waters are calm.
You don't even know they're there.
You only discover them when the environment forces you to dig deep.
It reminds me of the concept of muscular hypertrophy. You don't build muscle by lifting light weights that are easy for you. You have to push the muscle to the point of failure.
Exactly.
The hardship is the heavyweight. It doesn't just hurt you, it breaks you down to introduce you to a much stronger version of yourself.
Which brings us to a critical pivot point in Kanandri's philosophy. Because while the storm provides the environment for this growth, the growth itself is not automatic. He emphasizes that while the storm may shake you, it absolutely does not define you.
Your response defines you.
Yes, your response to
Let's
that.
pause on that. Your response defines you. That sounds incredibly empowering, but practically speaking, when you are in the middle of a massive life disruption, it is so easy to let the event become your entire identity.
It is the easiest trap to fall into, and it is a complete surrender of your personal agency. The storm, the bankruptcy, the sudden illness, the unexpected job loss, that is an external event.
Right.
It is an objective occurrence that happened to you. It is entirely outside of your control. And if you let that external event define who you are, you become synonymous with your trauma.
Your identity shrinks.
Your identity shrinks to become the person who lost their business or the victim of a terrible betrayal. But Kanandri draws a hard line in the sand. He says, no, that event is just the weather you are currently standing in. Who you are is determined entirely by what you do next.
Your identity is forged exclusively in your response.
Exclusively.
And this leads us right into the climax of the text, which is an absolute paradigm shift regarding the questions we ask ourselves in moments of crisis. When we are suffering, when we are standing in the wreckage of our plans, the default human question, the one that bubbles up in almost every single one of us is, why is this happening to me?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at what that specific question does to human psychology. Why do we ask, why me? It actually stems from something psychologists call the just world fallacy.
I've heard of that. It's the cognitive bias that assumes the universe is inherently fair, right? We are conditioned from childhood to believe that good things happen to good people and bad things only happen to bad people.
Exactly. So when a random destructive storm hits our life and we know we didn't do anything to deserve it, it causes massive psychological distress. We ask, why is this happening to me? Because we are desperately searching for the logic in an illogical event.
We want it to make sense.
But that question anchors us entirely in a victim mentality. It focuses all of our mental energy backward, searching for a justification that we will likely never find. Sometimes market conditions just change. Sometimes people are just selfish. Sometimes weather is just weather.
And asking why me keeps you completely paralyzed.
Yeah.
You're demanding an answer from an empty sky while the water is rising around your ankles. You are refusing to adapt because you are too busy demanding an explanation.
You're stuck.
But Kanandri tells us that this is the wrong question entirely. He writes, the real question is, who am I becoming through this?
That is the aha moment of this entire deep dive for the learner. I want the listener to just let that question sink in. Who am I becoming through this? Notice the tense of the sentence.
It's active.
It is active. It is forward-looking. It takes you from being a passive victim of a random unfair storm and immediately transforms you into the active architect of your own character. It takes all that wasted cognitive energy you were spending on asking why and redirects it toward your own evolution.
It changes everything about the experience of adversity. Because suddenly the storm isn't just a tragedy, it's a crucible. It is the fire that is actively forging you.
Yes.
When you ask, who am I becoming? You are forced to brutally examine your own response. Am I becoming someone who is bitter, resentful, cynical, and defeated? Or am I using this friction to become someone who is patient, highly adaptable, empathetic, and strategically unshakable?
The power shifts.
The power, which felt entirely lost when the storm hit, is suddenly placed right back in your hands.
It is a profound reframing technique. It validates the pain of the present moment while anchoring your focus firmly on the future. And let's be honest, it demands a level of self-awareness and accountability that is incredibly challenging.
Oh, it's so much easier to just be angry.
But choosing to ask, who am I becoming, is ultimately liberating. You are no longer defined by the fact that you fell down. You are defined by the sheer strength and grace it takes to stand back up and navigate the new reality.
So what does this all mean? We have deconstructed the nature of the storm. We have looked at the strategic advantage of accepting reality. We have found the hidden data and strength in our setbacks and delays. And we have fundamentally flipped the script on the questions we ask ourselves in the dark.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Where does Kanandri leave us after all of this internal restructuring? He synthesizes this final call to action. 3 words, rise anyway.
Rise anyway. It's a command, but it functions beautifully as a permission slip. It acknowledges the severity of what you have been through. It says, yes, you have every right to stay down. The storm was brutal.
The failure was objectively devastating.
The betrayal was deeply, profoundly unfair. You have every right to be exhausted, but you must rise anyway.
And he finishes the thought by explicitly telling us why. He doesn't offer a cliche. He doesn't say rise anyway because it's easy, because it isn't. He doesn't say rise anyway because people are watching or because you have to prove your critics wrong, which is just letting your ego drive the bus again.
Right.
He writes, but because your future deserves your courage.
That is a stunning sentiment to end on. It personifies your future self. It turns your future into a tangible entity that is waiting for you, entirely relying on the decisions you make today.
It's waiting on you.
Your future is a blank canvas, but it cannot be painted if you refuse to pick up the brush in the aftermath of a storm. The courage you muster right now, the choice to accept reality and extract the lessons in the midst of the hardest moments of your life, is a direct investment in the person you are going to be tomorrow.
I love that so much. Your future deserves your courage. It's such a deeply personal internal motivation. It completely strips away the performative aspect of resilience. It's not about showing the world how tough you are. It's about honoring the life you have yet to live. It's a promise you make to yourself.
If we were to synthesize everything we have unpacked from Kanandri's text today, the architecture of this philosophy is remarkably clear and practical.
Give us a recap.
First, recognize that the storm is inevitable. Disruptions will occur no matter how carefully you plan. Second, remember that acceptance is the starting line, not the finish line. You cannot navigate a map if you refuse to admit where you are currently standing.
Right.
Third, view the hardship itself as the training ground it contains, the data, the preparation, and the hidden strength you need for your next chapter. And finally, your future is the ultimate reason you choose to stand back up. The pain of the disruption is temporary, but the character you forge in the fire of your response is permanent.
It really is a masterclass in shifting your perspective from passive victimhood to active agency. We started this deep dive by asking you, the listener, to think about a specific challenge you are currently facing in your own life. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final lingering concept to mull over on your own.
I like where this is going.
It builds directly on Kanandri's idea of becoming someone new through the storm, but it flips the timeline. Think about this. If the storm doesn't define you, but your response does, how does that change the way we should look back at the storms we've already survived?
Oh, that's fascinating.
We spend so much time viewing our past struggles merely as eras of pain or dark chapters of our lives we just want to suppress and forget. But if your identity is forged in your response, do we actually owe those past battered versions of ourselves a profound debt of gratitude for simply choosing to rise?
That is an incredibly powerful way to reevaluate our own history.
That past version of you was in the dark, they were terrified, their plans are completely ruined, but they mustered the courage to stand up anyway. And solely because they made that choice, you have the privilege of being here today.
It turns our past scars from symbols of victimization into undeniable testaments of our own resilience. It allows you to trust yourself going into the next storm, knowing you have a track record of rising.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. It has been an absolute privilege to unpack these complex, transformative ideas with you. Whatever storm you might be facing right now, whether it's a minor delay or a massive disruption, we hope you can take a deep breath, accept the reality of the landscape, ask yourself who you are actively becoming, and carry this courage forward. Rise anyway. Your future deserves it.